You may have been using pocket holes incorrectly and not even know it, but once you master these 13 tips, you will be very proficient at creating great pocket hole joinery. And stick around till the very end because there's actually going to be a bonus tip that I learned recently that blew my mind, so stay tuned for that. Quick disclaimer before we get started, I'm going to be using Kreg products in this video, but they are not sponsoring this video. I paid with my own money for all these tools. I just really think that they're great products and I would recommend them to you. Links are in the description. Tip number one is use pocket hole screws for pocket hole joinery, not normal wood screws. And let me show you the reason why. When you drill a pocket hole pilot hole with this kreg screw, you can see here that it's a stepped bit. So there's going to be a more thin hole at the very end and then a wider hole which creates this shoulder or this shelf. And this is designed for the flat head of the pocket hole screw to rest on that shoulder. It's basically designed to stop the screw from going through the other end of the board. If you use a normal screw, which isn't flat, but it's tapered, kind of like a triangle, it's just going to blow straight through that shoulder that's created and come out the other side. And so it might seem simple, but you'll be surprised about how many people try to use a normal wood screw rather than a pocket hole screw. Tip number two is select the screw with the right amount of coarseness to the thread. These threads are much more coarse than these threads, or in other words, these threads have more rotations. And here's the reason why. The fine thread screws are designed for hardwoods like oak, maple, black walnut, whereas this coarse screw is designed, or coarse thread is designed for softwoods like fir or pine. So just make sure, based on whatever material you're using, you pick your screw accordingly. And tip number three, when it comes to using screws, make sure you select the correct screw when it comes to indoor versus outdoor. With kreg, the outdoor screws have this blue coating on it, which will protect it against rust. And if you use indoor screws on an outdoor project, I promise you that joint will fail eventually. So make sure if it's an outdoor project, use the blue screw. Tip number four, set your stop collar to the correct depth. And this has to do with the material thickness that you are drilling the pocket hole into. Now this is 3/4 of an inch thick. I can always check that here with my little kreg multi-tool. But I want to make sure that I set my stop collar to accommodate 3/4 of an inch material. As you can see here, there's these little circles that are right on the drill bit that tell you if you're working with 1/2 inch material, you can set the collar where this circle is over that. Of course, I have it set to 3/4 of an inch, and also you have 1.5 inches, which is nice if you're working with 2x4s, 2x6s, anything like that. Tip number five, always use a drill, never an impact driver when you are installing your pocket hole screws. An impact driver, just like the name implies, is intended to drive a screw into the material. And so if you use an impact driver, you're more likely to blow through that little shelf that the pocket hole drill bit creates, and the screw will shoot out the other side of the material. And we've all been there, let's admit it, but it's never fun. So don't use a impact driver, use a drill. And number six, kind of sticking with the same theme, is you always want to make sure you have the clutch setting on your drill set fairly low. This might take some adjustment depending on what type of drill you have. I always use the Milwaukee M18 drills personally. I think it's a great drill impact driver set, but always set the clutch to maybe between 8 and 10 so that you won't over tighten your pocket hole screws. All right, the next few tips have to do with the Kreg 720 Pro. Like I said, not sponsored, but this is a great pocket hole jig. And tip number 7 actually has to do with the positioning of the jig. So you've probably seen most woodworkers use it in this position where they insert the material, clamp it down, and you can drill pocket holes. But you can also use this in different positions. So these little stands can come out. Set those to the side. And let's say you were putting pocket holes in a pretty large sheet of plywood. Well, putting the plywood in this little slot would be super wonky and just uncomfortable. But you can flip your kreg jig this direction, slide the plywood in this way, and then lock down your pocket hole jig. What number are we on? I totally forgot. One more really cool feature about this kreg jig is that the height between wherever your working surface is and this base right here is 1.5 inches. Now, why is that important? Because 1.5 inches is the same thickness of a piece of 2x4 or a 2x6. And so if you're working with really long material and you don't want to just balance it on this little 3-inch ledge, you can set a 2x4 block out here, a 2x4 block out here, lay your piece down, and it will be perfectly flat for you to install your pocket holes. Number 9 is if you have the Kreg 720 Pro, you can actually set this little guy right here to make repeatable cuts. Let's say that there's multiple pieces of wood that you want to cut, 3 inches in, for example. Just set this in once, whatever 3 inches is, lock this down. You can go ahead and, insert your pilot holes, take this out, bring the next piece of wood, line it up, and there you go, you're good to go. This can adjust. You can also, I just learned this recently, flip this around to adjust the positioning. So even if you want to make repeatable cuts right inside here, for example, you can line it up to do just that. Number 10, this is another thing that I learned recently. You might have had a pocket hole jig for a while, maybe the Kreg jig, and you said, why are there 3 different holes and why are they spaced out so weirdly? Well, here is the explanation. Up here you have some indicators, some lines. I'll get a closer shot of this. And these long lines are showing the center of each pilot hole. So this line is the center of this hole, this line is the center of this hole, this line is the center of this hole. But then you also have some other shorter lines, and these lines are showing you the center between each combination of holes. So this line right here is showing you the center between these 2 pocket holes. This line right here is showing you the difference between these 2 pocket holes. And then this line right here is showing you the difference between these 2 pocket holes. The outside pocket holes, for example, are a perfect width apart if you want to insert 2 pocket hole screws into a 2x4. So you can just find the center line of a 2x4, line it up with this center line, and drill your holes. All right, so for my next tip, it is that you need to always joint your lumber together, even using pocket holes, with either a face grain or an edge grain. You never want to use end grain, and let me show you why. Now, really quickly, I want to get you familiar with the different types of grain on a board. If you have a board that's running this way, so the tree would have grown like this. This is called the long or the edge grain, and it's great for joinery. This right here is the face grain. You can still see these fibers kind of going a long way, so that's the face grain. And then right here, this looks really unique. This is the end grain. Hopefully you can see this right here. Now, end grain is where all of the fibers are running this way. Think of like a bunch of straws that suck the water up to the top of the tree. There's water running inside these tiny little straws that run up and down the end grain. And so when you put a screw into the end grain, it's just not going to be as strong because it's kind of like it's going in the middle of all of those straws as opposed to into all of those straws this way. So what does that mean for pocket hole jointery? It means that you can always joint this way. For example, I'm just using some scrap wood here, but I'm going from a face grain into a long grain. So this would be a very strong joint. What you don't want to do is something like this, where you're taking a face grain and joining it into the end grain of a board. I could probably tear that apart with my hands. So never join boards that way. One of the downsides of pocket hole joinery, and a reason why many people don't like to use pocket hole joinery, is that they leave these giant scars in your workpiece where you've drilled the pilot hole and inserted the screw. Kreg does have a solution for this, and it's these basically 3/8 inch dowels that are cut a specific way that you can use to plug the hole for your project. And so these work really, really nicely. All you do to install one, if this was an actual project that I wanted to finish, is throw a little bit of Titebond glue in there. Go ahead and take your dowel. You can also make these yourself, but I'll link these Kreg ones down in the description. And you'd want to tap this in with a mallet if this was a real project, but I'm just going to slide it in. They slide in very easily. And then once this glue dries, I can come back with a flush trim saw and just trim this up, sand it. And if you're painting your project, you really wouldn't even know that this plug was here. One more tip when it comes to drilling your pocket holes, use the highest speed setting on your drill. Mine has a 1 or a 2, so always drill with the highest speed. That will give you cleaner pocket holes. Hey, if you found value from this video, and I hope that you have, hit the like button. It's free and it would really help me out. It actually helps me bring you more helpful woodworking content, which is something that I really, really love to do. Hey, let's go ahead and check out the bonus tip. When you use dust collection, it keeps the sawdust away from your drill bit, which will actually keep your bit sharper for longer and extend the life of the drill bit. And the reason it does this is because when the sawdust is kept away from the drill bit, it's keeping the temperature of the drill bit cooler so it can stay sharp for longer, essentially. And so hopefully that made sense. But always have dust collection on. Not only will it keep your shop cleaner, but it will make your bit last longer. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you have further questions about some of the tips that I talked about or any other questions when it comes to pocket hole joinery, let me know in the comments. I try to read all of those and respond to as many as I possibly can. Hey, once again, thank you so much for watching. And if you liked this video, I promise that you will love these videos.